From the Mumbai studios of Republic TV, it's time for The Debate.
Debate at 9. Presented by Amity University. Powered by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group and Century Ply.
Thank you for joining us on this breaking news broadcast. My name is Niranjan Narayan Swamy and I'm filling in for Arnab Goswami, who will be back on the show tomorrow. We've been live since this morning. Russia has invaded Ukraine. Kiev has been encircled. Hundreds are dead on both sides. We are at war. Nobody knows how this will end, but we know that the world just watched Russia strike and did nothing about it. We have a breaking news broadcast tonight, and here are the two big subjects on the show at 9 p.m. Staying on the breaking news broadcast on Kiev, are we entering World War III? What happens if Russia hits one of the NATO nations on its borders? And here are the headlines this evening on The Debate tonight. Choppers, jets, airstrikes in multiple cities, full-scale Russian invasion in Ukraine, which has been bombarded. Airstrikes in Kiev, explosions in Kharkiv, firing in Odessa, most Ukrainian cities seeing a Russian assault. Russian chopper spotted right outside Kiev. Ukraine claims that a full-scale invasion of Kiev is possible and that Russia has encircled it. The world watched Kabul fall, and they're watching as Kiev is encircled once again. Prime Minister Modi meets the Cabinet Committee on Security and he's expected to dial Vladimir Putin tonight. India expected to make its stand clear. Thousands of Indian students stranded across different locations in Kiev. The Indian ambassador with them tonight as India looks at how we can bring them all back and safe. Over 100 people have been killed in the Russian invasion of Ukraine since this morning. Russia has removed Ukraine's air defense systems. They've struck Ukrainian cities, they hit their military bases, they've struck their airports, and they've completely destroyed whatever was left of Ukrainian military installations in precision bombings. Here's how the team at Republic TV on the ground and from our newsrooms have tracked the story.
Strikes at the Melitopol airport in Ukraine. Missile attacks on the middle of the street. Strikes in Odessa. Explosions in warehouses. Military sites in Mariupol attacked. Choppers and fighter jets fly over regions near Kiev and beyond. Locals are frantic. And amidst it all, our team is reporting from Ground Zero.
हमें वापस गाड़ी
बिल्कुल गाड़ी में हम बैठ रहे हैं और ये जो क्योंकि अब फिर से कहा गया है कि आगे निकलिए, लेकिन मैं एक आखिरी बार दिखाना चाहूंगा। ये लाइन देखिए, धमाके हो रहे हैं, धुआं हमारे पीछे उठ रहा है, धुआं उठ रहा है और हम भी अब गाड़ी में बैठेंगे और यहाँ से निकलने की कोशिश करेंगे।
On our way from Kharkiv all the way to Kiev, we've stopped at one such location which is closer to Poltava, where we heard loud explosions. Two such explosions that took place in the vicinity. As you can see, several such houses have been evacuated. This house, a short while back, we were given to understand this entire area has now been completely evacuated.
Republic is reporting from the breakaway regions of Ukraine.
And right now we are in Donetsk, and all the soldiers behind me have just joined the Donetsk People's Republic military. These are the deputies and lawmakers of the republic, the leaders, if you will. And you can see behind me, they are all ready to go to war.
Russian President Putin is warning of severe consequences.
They talk about the same open doors policy. More than that, once again, they try to blackmail us. Once again, they threaten us with sanctions. And I think they will still impose those, introduce those as strong and as more powerful our country becomes. They will always find an excuse to introduce more sanctions, regardless of the situation in Ukraine, that is. The only goal they have is to contain the development of Russia. And they will do that like they did it before.
Zelensky is putting on a tough fight.
Шановні громадяни України, сьогодні вранці президент Путін оголосив проведення спеціальної військової операції на Донбасі. Росія здійснила удари по нашій військовій інфраструктурі та по нашим прикордонникам, прикордонним загонам в багатьох містах України.
NATO says it will not act just yet.
NATO is the strongest alliance in history. And make no mistake, we will defend and protect every ally against any attack and every inch of NATO territory. And that's the reason also we have increased our presence in the eastern part of the alliance with thousands of more troops, ships and planes over the last weeks.
Joe Biden says Russia will be held accountable.
President Putin has sought authorization from the Russian parliament to use military force outside of Russian territory. And this set the stage for further pretexts of further provocations by Russia to try to justify further military action. None of us should be fooled. None of us will be fooled. There is no justification. Further Russian assault in Ukraine remains a severe threat in the days ahead. And if Russia proceeds, it is Russia and Russia alone that bears the responsibility.
And as countries begin to pick sides in a war that is brewing, the biggest question remains, will there be a World War III? Let's debate.
Joining us on the broadcast this evening, Major General J.D. Bakshi from New Delhi. Maria Golub will be joining us live. She's the former advisor to the European Union representative in Ukraine. Maxim Kyak, who's the expert of the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism, live from Kiev this evening. James Russell, Associate Professor, Department of National Security Affairs, Naval Postgraduate School, live from California. Rick Fisher is a Senior Fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center in Washington, D.C. Glenn Diesen, who's a Professor at the University of Southeastern Norway and Editor at Russia and Global Affairs, live from Norway. Fred Ware, Senior Journalist, live from Moscow. And Andrew K.P. Leung, joining us live from Hong Kong. I'd like to get the ground perspective first from Kiev. Let me go across to Maxim Kyak. Maxim, has Russia encircled Kiev?
Well, at the moment I am sitting in Kiev. I'm not encircled. Kiev is not encircled. Believe me, Kiev will not give up. For sure, there were some attempts, some shellings. I even heard some of the shellings. Just a few hours ago, there was our Ukrainian forces plane was just bombed or attacked by Russian forces. Probably you just can see that I'm using only one headphone. It's just because every minute, every moment, a shelling might start. And this is pretty dangerous, I would say, but we are still resilient. And yeah, no, people is not encircled. And I would like to reassure you that Ukrainians will not give up. Yes, there was some panic in the morning, but right now Ukrainians understand that they can defend their country, and the enemy, the aggressor, Russia, is not that strong as people think it is.
Okay. General Bakshi, you've been watching the developments since this morning. I'd like to get to your perspective first before I go across and get our panelists from across the world. The manner in which Russia has struck pre-planned precision bombings, military bases, depots hit to ensure that any military threat would be limited.
I'm not sure I understood it. I got your question.
To General Bakshi, my question was to General Bakshi. General Bakshi in Delhi, yes.
Sorry, yeah, sure.
Thank you. You see, as I was saying, today was day one of the Russian offensive, where their primary aim was to go in for suppression of the antagonists' air defenses, SIAD as it is called in military parlance, and it was to hit with their Iskander missiles. They have hit 11 airfields. They have hit locations, military locations around 30 cities, including Kiev, where they have hit the airfield. They have hit the air defense radars. They have hit the anti-aircraft missile the batteries. They have started the strikes on Kharkiv, and they are advancing onto Kharkiv. There was an exodus from Kharkiv. Their tanks are advancing right now onto Kiev, and they look like something like a Spetsnaz operation to try and make an airhead in the Kiev military airport. So there were helicopters that we saw flying around there, Russian helicopters, B-17, Hokum attack helicopters. They seem to have gained air superiority, all right, because their planes were doing formation flying over Kyiv. Their planes were doing formation flying over Kharkiv. They have started attacks, kinetic attacks in the Donbass. They have started strikes in Mariupol, the coastal cities of Mariupol, the coastal city of Odessa. The Black Fleet, Sea Fleet is shelling. Likely landing of Marines, not confirmed, but there seems to be some air of ambiguity there. But these are all the stated targets. When we had done our analysis, we found that they have either a full-scale option or a limited option. Limited options indicated attacking Kharkiv, Donbass, Mariupol, Odessa. The full-scale option, of course, started with Kyiv, because that is the key command and control center. The key command and control elements are in Kyiv, the presidential palace, the Ministry of Defense, Interior, etc. I am not getting into any morality play. I am just talking military facts, please. So let's get that right. I am just talking military facts. So today was the first day. The advances will come pursuant to this. The ground advance with armor, with masked fire strike complexes, they'll be coming tomorrow. I suppose they'll do saturation attacks, fire saturation attacks to suppress the shoulder-fired air defense missiles, the Stingers, the ATGM javelins that have been given in plenty by the Americans. And to sort of break the will, they will try these fire assaults. So in the next few days, I see much more of armor action, fast-paced advances. Now, what is their aim? I would reckon for one possible aim is regime change. Professor Mearsheimer of the University of Chicago, and I have a lot of time for what he writes, he has said that the aim would not be to hold ground. The aim would be to wreck Ukraine as a functional state, and in the bargain ensure regime change. Like I said, I'm not getting into morality plays, who's right, who's wrong. I'm just telling you the military, what has been happening, what is likely to happen as a pure military analyst, right? And what we have learnt is, the lesson learned very clear, which has emerged, is that when nations feel that they have a core strategic interest involved, they are prepared to endure a great amount of economic pain. Russia has been enduring economic pain, and despite all the threats of sanctions, graduated in quanta, now in full, it has not deterred them. It has not deterred them. He's gone ahead and done what he has.
Yeah.
On the contrary, the United States' strategic stakes in Ukraine are not that high as Russia's are. NATO's strategic stakes in Ukraine don't seem to be as high. The simple fact is both United States and NATO have clearly said they will not put boots on the ground.
Yes, you're right.
So I'm very sorry to state, but I feel bad for the Ukrainians. People seem to be very willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian.
Yeah.
They have been left to fight for themselves.
Chal Bakshi.
They have been egged on, and now they are all alone when push comes to shove.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Have not deterred anyone.
Sir, that was going to be my next question to our friends from the US.
Iran, they didn't deter North Korea.
Absolutely. Look, Rick Fisher, okay, let me put this question to James Russell. James Russell, you're joining us live from California for all the big talk that's been happening in the last few weeks. What has the West done? What will the West actually do when all that the NATO was able to say is that we will shield all allies from Russia no matter what? So what exactly is the West waiting for? Are you waiting for the situation to spiral out of control just like it happened in Taliban in Kabul last year on the 15th of August? James Russell. James Russell from California.
Yes.
Yeah, you can take that question, James.
So I think the approach of the Americans at this point is to use, or is to, in the circumstance, deploy additional forces to Europe. American senior leaders have been in Europe's Defense Secretary Austin, Vice President Kamala Harris, and we are doing everything we can, of course, to strengthen the Western European and NATO response. And I think we've been successful, that we're in lockstep with the Europeans to bring us closer together and to stop any further Russian aggression. And I think there can't be any question, given the rambling speeches that have been delivered by Putin over the last week or so, that Putin views this as the beginning of a sort of more general attempt to roll back the circumstances of the post-Cold War that saw the former Eastern European states enter sort of Western affiliation, and many of them, of course, have become members of NATO. So the rubber meets the road, I think, for the United States and its European partners in terms of whether threats come directly against NATO members, which invoke Article 5 commitments, and should that happen, I don't think there's any question that the United States and its European allies would respond as required under the alliance. As your previous speaker noted, Ukraine is not a NATO member. In the discussions before the invasion, I think President Biden discussed this with Putin, said, you know, this is not a NATO member. We're not going to respond militarily, but I don't think Putin should be under any illusions that should further Russian aggression continue. Yes. And let's be honest about this, that the attack on Ukraine places Russian forces closer to NATO forces in Poland, for example. They've already assumed a threatening posture against the Balkans. So I don't think there's any sort of question that we are entering a new period of military standoff between NATO and Russia, the Europeans, the United States, and Putin has sort of single-handedly reinvigorated the NATO alliance in the aftermath of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So the lines of my perception, at least, is that the lines of communication between Washington and European capitals are open and alive with consultation, as has not been the case in the recent history. And so my opinion, I guess, is that the Putin and Russia is going to confront a unified NATO, a unified U.S.-European partnership. And of course, the American and I think European preference is to deter further aggression. But as we have seen, at least so far, Putin shows himself to be little interested in.
Nothing's been deterred. James, nothing's been better. If nothing's been better, let me get Fred where. Fred, Russia has actually proven Joe Biden right, isn't it? Joe Biden said we have reason to believe that Russian forces are planning and intend to attack Ukraine in the coming week, in the coming days. That was on the 18th of February. Turned out to be quite right. Until this morning, you know, our crews were in Kharkiv. We were reporting from Kharkiv when the bombardment happened right outside the hotel where my colleague Shavan, Rawat and, Mridul were reporting. They woke up to the blasts, and before they could put their cameras up live, they were asked to evacuate. Even media was asked to just flee Kharkiv when Russian tanks rolled into Kharkiv. And the best part of it all, you ask the Russians and all our Russian panelists who've been coming, they say, no, we haven't invaded. It's Ukrainian, it is propaganda. Our tanks haven't really rolled in. And they're saying, and they're defending the strikes by saying we're just hitting sites that threatened Russia. I mean, as someone who's sitting in Moscow, how do you see this? Putin has actually proven Joe Biden right by invading.
Yes, truth is the first casualty, and truth was probably a casualty here all along. I think people will be debating for a long time whether this past two and a half months was a charade on Putin's part, or whether he really wanted to find a diplomatic solution with the West. That is, some kind of a general treaty or formal agreement that Ukraine will be a neutral state. Which is what they said. He did clearly abandon diplomacy last Monday night, and in doing so, he also questioned Ukraine's sovereign right to exist. He did that quite explicitly, and then within days we had this invasion. It's a completely new world. I agree with your other guest. Everything has changed now, and nothing will go back the way it was. But we'll have to, at some point, return to diplomacy because World War III, I think, is not an option.
Is there a chance for diplomacy? Are you still hoping and banking on diplomacy after what's happened today? I mean, hundreds of people have already died today. Hundreds of people have died, and yes, nobody, including Joe Biden, not Joe Biden, not NATO, nobody could do a thing.
Yeah, I'm not banking on it today, tomorrow, or next week. I'm saying in the long run. It depends a lot on what Putin has decided to do. Many of the Russian security experts I talked to have said that he's not looking to reestablish the Soviet Union or the Russian Empire. What he has is an idea that's more like a neo-imperialist idea of having a client state or a country that it might have its own system, its own leaders. They may not even care what kind of system it has, as long as it is clear on its geopolitical alignment that it won't join NATO. That might satisfy Putin.
Yes.
He may, in other words, have limited goals. But we have yet to see, and this invasion, of course, is monstrous and horrifying. And today, this is what absorbs us, and Putin is clearly entirely to blame for this.
Okay, let me bring in our friends from Kiev. Oleksiy Haran is a professor of comparative politics in the Kiev Mohyla Academy. He's live from Kiev this evening. Oleksiy, thank you for joining us. Difficult times for all of us. Yes, namaste. Thank you for joining us. What's the situation? How is the situation in Kiev? What have you seen? What can you tell our viewers here in India?
Yeah, I think there's not much time to talk about the situation in Kiev, but I would like my Indian colleagues to understand a very simple thing. Ukrainian democracy and Ukrainian state was attacked in non-provoked aggression. Basically, I would like to correct a colleague from Moscow that this is not about, new reality or some neo-imperialist approach even. Putin denies the very existence of Ukrainians as a nation. This is a quote from Putin. Ukrainians and Russians are one people. There are no separate Ukrainian nation. Second point, Putin declared that Ukraine doesn't have tradition of statehood, and that's why it's a failed state. So, and what he is doing, he is trying to crush this independent state. So basically what Putin uses as an explanation is a Goebbels type propaganda. He behaves like Hitler and Stalin, that's for sure. He is trying to find a pretext for blitzkrieg. And I would like for Indian colleagues to understand that both India and Ukraine are democracies. Democracies are not perfect, but we are not dictatorship. What Putin is doing and what India faced for many, many years, India struggled for its independence against foreign domination, against separatism, and against terrorism.
Alexei!
And what's Ukrainian state?
Alexei, I have a news conference coming in from my friend, Alexei, my friend. We have the Indian External Affairs Ministry in the Indian government speaking live right now. I think there's a big announcement. The Prime Minister has just met. I'd like to cut across live, please, for just a few minutes.
Chaired by the Prime Minister in session to take stock of this situation. Prime Minister has conveyed at the CCS meeting that the topmost priority of the government is the safety and security of Indian nationals, including Indian students, and their evacuation from Ukraine. Prime Minister is scheduled to speak to the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shortly. External Affairs Minister will be speaking to the foreign ministers of the countries neighboring Ukraine, namely Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Hungary. Earlier this evening, he also spoke to the EU High Representative as well as the Foreign Minister of the UK. A number of steps have been taken over the last month or so to deal with the emerging situation in Ukraine, including the contingencies that could arise, and I'm referring to the situation as we see today. We started the registration of Indian nationals in the Ukraine about a month ago. Our embassy anticipated the need to connect and be in contact with all Indian students in the Ukraine. Based on the online registration process that was conducted by our embassy, we found that there were close to about 20,000 Indian nationals, including students in the Ukraine. Of these, about 4,000 have since left the country. We have taken a number of measures to facilitate flights out of the country. This includes removing the cap on the number of passengers that could fly out of Ukraine that was imposed by the civil aviation authorities of both countries. There was a 440 numbers that could fly out every week. That cap was removed. We also ensured that the number of flights were augmented rapidly from about twice a week to about 2 flights a day. And that enabled us to get at least 4,000 of our citizens and students out. We should also remember that there were a number of other options available through flights to Dubai and Istanbul and other places from Kyiv. Our embassy in Ukraine continues to be functional, is rendering all assistance possible to Indian nationals there, notwithstanding the fairly complicated and evolving situation that we find ourselves in. The embassy has issued a number of advisories in recent days. Today itself, the embassy has issued 3 advisories, and these provide advice to Indian nationals on the situation as it evolves, travel towards safer places, including western parts of the country that will facilitate the exit by road and other means, safety precautions that our citizens could take, etc. Our ambassador has also sent a personal message to all Indian citizens in Ukraine, providing advice. We are consulting universities, student contractors in the process of providing for the welfare and safety of our students. A control room has been set up in MEA. Now this control room has been functional for the past 7 or 8 days, but we have seriously augmented the strength. We have over 20 officers that are manning these control rooms, this control room in the Ministry of External Affairs on a 24/7 basis. Just to give an example, till now and just today, we have answered 980 calls and dealt with some 850 emails that were sent to this control room. Our embassy in Kiev has also set up a helpline, 24/7 helpline center. The other measure that we have taken is that we have dispatched Russian-speaking officers to Kiev and to the countries neighboring Ukraine. Russian-speaking because the language there is Russian. If you're not Russian-speaking, your utility is far more limited. Some of these officers are already reached and are functioning. Some will be reaching shortly. We've also asked our embassies, our ambassadors in the countries neighboring Ukraine, and I mentioned these, Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary, to send teams of their officers to the border areas with Ukraine to facilitate the exit of Indian nationals from Ukraine, to permit them to come into their countries, so where they can be safely evacuated back to India. And MEA teams are on their way as we speak to Zahoni border post in Hungary, Krakvier's land border in Poland, Visny Nemke in Slovak Republic, and Suseva land border in Romania. We have also asked some of our officers to go across and set up camp offices in Ukraine close to the border. Two of the places we have identified are Lviv, which is close to Poland, and Chernivtsi, which is close to Romania. And here I think will be sort of facilitation points. Now our embassy has, it's a very complicated, very evolving situation. It's obviously, certain areas there's conflict. We can't have a single sort of advisory that fits all situations. We have to evolve. We have to see where we are and how and which part of the country you're located and what the situation is. Generally, if we are advising that if you find yourself in a certain difficult situation, then you should remain in secure areas and shelters, etc. If you can, you move westwards towards the borders with some of the countries I mentioned. And these advisories will be continuously issued. These helplines are for that purpose, so that depending on the situation, that advice can be given. One important step that we have taken, because a number of our students were reluctant to leave because the authorities, university authorities had said that the classes must be offline. We have now persuaded all the universities and institutions to allow online classes, and therefore students can actually leave without having to face the strain of not being able to or missing out on their classes. As I said, the situation on the ground is difficult and is rapidly evolving. I want to take this opportunity to assure all Indian citizens, including students in Ukraine and their family members, that we will take all possible steps to bring you back safe and sound, bring your wards back safe and sound. Prime Minister has specifically stated that the Ministry of External Affairs should do everything possible in coordination, of course, with other ministries involved, to ensure that facilitation on the lines that I discussed, helplines, control rooms, officers available, shelters, accommodation, facilitation in every manner is done for our citizens. We, of course, had a few citizens outside our embassy also. I'm told that at least all of them, I'm talking about numbers of about 200 to 250 of our citizens, have been accommodated in schools in the area. The embassy has been asked to facilitate their requirements, and depending on the situation, we will have them evacuated westwards. As you know, this government has been very focused when it comes to the welfare of Indian citizens in difficult situations around the world. We have had a lot of experience in facilitating and arranging such evacuations. The Vande Bharat mission, which is the largest repatriation exercise of its kind, was undertaken during the peak of COVID times. More recently, we had Op Devi Shakti, which is involving the evacuation of Indian nationals from Afghanistan, from a conflict situation. We will obviously have to take into account that every situation presents its own challenges, and we have to deal with it accordingly. So perhaps I'll stop here and see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Please introduce yourselves before taking the questions. Maybe I'll start with you right here. I saw your hand go first, and then we'll.
Sir, I'm Akhilesh Suman from Sansad TV. Russia and the US both are our strategic partners. And in this point of time, are we playing any role talking to both US and Russia to stop the war and create a situation when there can be a congenial atmosphere in the region?
Take a few more. A couple of more. Yeah, please. Come back.
So would you like to make any comments on the sanctions being imposed on Russia? Does that bring more difficulty for us as far as our military acquisitions are concerned? Thank you. Nainima from Ukraine.
My question is regarding India's consistent position when it comes to countries' territorial sovereignty regarding this invasion. A country's territorial sovereignty is being violated. What does New Delhi has to say on that? I'm Siddhant from Beyond.
And fourth.
Meghna from DD News. Sir, some states have also set up control rooms. So is the MA coordinating with the state control rooms as well? Where do those people who reach out to state control rooms, does it reach the MA? How does it work?
I'll take one last one. Okay. I'll come back to it.
So Hasini Haider from the Hindu. Foreign Secretary, we know that, as you said, there have been conversations between the EM, the European Union counterparts, the UK as well. I wanted to just touch on Nainima and Siddhant's questions on the UN Security Council resolution that the US says it is going to bring. Has India seen a draft of the resolution that is coming about? So far, India has the statements India has made have not criticized Russia, have referred to legitimate security interests of all parties, and has not actually affirmed the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So I just wanted to know if India's position on any of these is likely to change given this UNSC resolution.
So let us start with Akhilesh's question, which is, whether we are playing any role with our strategic partners. It is true that India has maintained the best of relations with all countries concerned, whether it's the United States, whether it's Russia, or whether it's the European Union. We have been in touch with all parties concerned, as you can imagine, both as a member of the Security Council, as a country with a lot at stake in that region, as a country with so many of its citizens in a vulnerable zone. We have been in close touch with all concerned. External Affairs Minister was in Europe recently, where he's had a number of meetings with his interlocutors. This evening, as I said, Prime Minister will be speaking to President Putin. External Affairs Minister himself has spoken to a number of ministers from the European Union, and will be speaking to those ministers, those of his counterparts who are from neighboring countries, which is very important, primarily for our own citizens and their safe evacuation out of Ukraine. So our focus in the UN Security Council has always been on de-escalation of tensions, on diplomatic dialogue as the only way forward, and we've also emphasized on the existing agreements, the Minsk agreements, the Normandy format. We've also obviously placed the highest importance to the safety and security of our nationals in the Ukraine in our statements in the UN Security Council. And so in all of this, I think we have, as I said, maintained that people need to talk to each other, the parties need to be engaged, and if there's anything that we can do to facilitate that engagement, we are more than happy to do. And I think as we go along, we will try and be as helpful as possible. Nainima's question on sanctions on Russia, you're aware that certain unilateral sanctions were already existing as far as Russia was concerned. Some additional sanctions have been imposed by the United States, by the EU, by Australia, Japan, the UK, among others. But this is an evolving situation, as I said, and we have to see what sort of impact these sanctions will have on our own interests Clearly, we need to study this carefully because any sanctions will have impact on our existing relationship. I think it would only be correct to acknowledge that factor. But the actual impact of the sanctions needs to be studied carefully, and we will do that. Siddhant, I think you spoke about the country's sovereignty. I think that question was also asked by Suhasini when you talked about our position in Security Council, the possibility of a UNSC resolution that would be tabled on the evolving situation. We have seen a draft resolution. I'm told that would undergo considerable changes. We will wait to see the shape that this resolution takes before we can pronounce ourselves on the position that we would take on this issue. So it is, as I said, an evolving situation both on the ground and in the United Nations. We are at the cutting edge of many of the issues, many of the areas where these issues will be discussed and will be considered by the international community. And we will certainly play our due role in that regard.
The state.
Yes, yes. So, excuse me. I think Neeta had asked this question about state control rooms. I can tell you that a number of chief secretaries of states have spoken to me. Obviously, states are concerned about students, about citizens from their states who are in Ukraine. We are coordinating very closely in that regard. It's only fair to tell you that we have set up, control rooms and teams all over. We've set up the control rooms in Hungary, in Poland, in Slovakia, and Romania. All this information is out in the public domain. But early in the day, whoever contacted me, I immediately sent out the details to them in our state governments. Our external publicity division has put all this out in the public domain. And all this is information that our states can use. We are, as I said, in close touch with all concerned who have a stake in this issue, whether it is parents, whether it is family members, or whether it is state governments, members of parliament, those who are concerned about this. And I just mentioned, Prime Minister chaired a meeting, is chairing a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security. They are examining all aspects of the situation, in particular, what sort of assistance, what sort of support that we can render to our citizens in this time of need. And clearly, involving the state governments in this activity is a part of that effort.
Thank you, sir. Next round of question I'll take here. Yeah, then I'll come to you.
Okay, that was the Foreign Ministry the Ministry of External Affairs news briefing, the Foreign Secretary talking about India's measures, what's next. Okay, let me get a word from Andrew KP Leung. Andrew, China is happy with what's happening, right? You're very happy with whatever Russia is doing?
I'm really sorry. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Yes.
Please, I see all the time on your screen that Kiev is encircled.
Right.
That invasion almost complete. This is simply not true. Can you change it? Where do you take this information from?
Okay, one second,
Are you
sir.
taking it from Russian propaganda? I'm really sorry.
Just asking.
Why do you use it?
One second, sir. My reporter,
is not
yes.
encircled.
Yes. 1 second, sir. My reporter is on the ground.
All the time, it's on the screen.
Yes. I'd like you to also listen to my reporter who's in Kiev. I'd like to go across to him. He's right outside Kiev. Let's go across to him. Shavan Sen is right there in Kiev. I'll go across to him. Right? And you can hear from him. I'm getting his camera up right now. I'm hearing that he's just coming live. Mr. Oleksiy Haran. He's just coming live any minute now. I'll be able to get him. Maybe you're not aware of the ground situation, sir. We're just plainly going by the reports.
I am very good aware.
Yes, and we are asking a question, sir. I think you can see that we're asking a question. You can't deny the fact that military bases have been bombarded. In fact, your own military has confirmed casualties on both sides. Ukraine has also confirmed about the casualties on your side and also on the Russian side. We have the full details. In fact, I also had a press release that came out from your commander-in-chief who said that heavy fighting is taking place in the Kharkiv region, in the area of the Joint Forces operation.
Yes, but look,
I'm giving you details.
But you...
Yeah, I'm giving you details.
Kiev is encircled.
We're asking a question. What's wrong in asking a question? What's wrong in asking a question? We are asking if Kiev is in... Okay, you hear from my reporter. You hear from my reporter. He's live. Shavan Sen is live. Shavan Sen. Shavan, you're in Kiev. Yeah, Shavan, our friends from Kiev want to know what the situation on the ground is. You told us about the choppers. We saw the videos of the choppers also outside and above the Gostomel military airbase. Coming across to you, Shavan. Take us to the ground report.
Well, in fact, Niranjan, what I would like to do for all our viewers right now is encapsulate what we have seen traveling over 500 kilometers starting from 6 o'clock this morning when we started from Kharkiv, where the first reports basically came in of explosions that took place just next to our hotel where we were basically staying. That was around 6 o'clock when locals essentially reported that there were explosions that were taking place, and then around 6:30 when we left from Kharkiv, we saw tanks that were on the streets, ambulances on the street. Thereafter, we have basically covered at least 6 to 7 cities, and almost in every city that we went to. In fact, in some of these cities, as we were crossing, there were explosions that actually took place a little away from where we were. There was an abandoned factory just behind that. We are given to understand that there were explosions that were taking place. And remember, this is not about explosions that were taking place inside the border itself. The reason why, sorry to just interrupt a little bit right now here, is that we've not been able to move around a little bit too much right now because we just at the outskirts of Kiev right now. As far as the situation right now in Kiev that we are being told is that from 10 o'clock the Kiev time, curfew is likely to be imposed, is what locals around us are telling, and they are certainly worried about whether at all the airport, the Kiev airport, is still under the control of the Ukrainian government or not. That clarity is still not there, so we're waiting for an official confirmation whether at all the airport is still under their control or not, because there were a lot of local reports essentially suggesting that there were basically dogfights that were basically taking place over the Kiev airport itself, the airspace over the Kiev airport. So that has led to some sort of a panic among the people, the local Ukrainians here. But let me just also tell all our viewers outside Ukraine at this point in time that the sentiment that we have picked up from across while we were basically traveling through those 6 to 7 cities, while they were leaving their homes, abandoning their own homes, packing into whatever they could, but almost everyone said that, look here, we are going to fight this out. That's the sentiment I can tell you in one line that we've got from traveling from various parts from one to the other. And the other thing that we've also got, an understanding is that as far as the sudden aggression that we're witnessing right now unfolding before us, as far as the Russians are concerned, there have been multiple reports, especially from the border areas, where the Ukrainian army has said that they have fought back. In fact, the latest report that has come in from the Ukrainian army is about bringing down at least 6 to 7 helicopters and fighter jets of the Russian army. Apart from that, there are prisoners of war that have been taken by the Ukrainian army. So clearly, there is a message that has also been sent out by the president of Ukraine, and that was an emotional message. Let me just recap that for all our viewers. Unlike the aggression that you've seen from the Russian side, Ukrainian president has basically hit out at the Russian president, indicating that this entire theory that Ukraine was about to bomb Donbass was completely, a hoax. In fact, he said that I have my own friends. I have been into that stadium in Donbass area, cheered for our team during the Euro Cup, and not just that, drank in a bar in the Donbass region. In fact, the president says that he's got his best friend's mother staying in the Donbass region. So, are you to really expect that there is going to be some sort of a bombing that is going to take place from the Ukrainian side in the Donbass region? So that in itself is very surprising. Let me just quickly get a word from my colleague Mridul, who both of us have been traveling, and the sense that we've got. Mridul, आपने जो देखा पिछले कुछ घंटों में, क्योंकि हमने कई सारे ऐसे इलाके जा चुके थे, अंदर में जो चीजें देखे, लोगों से बात करने की कोशिश की, एक तरह से अफरा तफरी मच चुकी थी.
बिल्कुल देखिए, हम पूरा सफ़र जो है वो बताना चाहेंगे क्योंकि एक एक तस्वीर हमने देखी है। जब हम खार्किव से निकले तो जैसे ही सड़कों पर निकले तो लोग भाग रहे थे और बमबारी हो रही थी। बमबारी के ठीक बाद हमने देखा, जब हम आगे की तरफ बढ़े, रिपब्लिक के टीवी नेटवर्क के कैमरे में कैद हुआ कि जो सड़क है उस पर टैंक चल रहे थे। ये दूसरे शहर की बात है। फिर हम जब तीसरे शहर में जाते हैं तो वहाँ पर हमने देखा कि किस तरीके से जो टैंक हैं वो और भी हमें दिखाई दिए, 2-3 बार हमें टैंक दिखाई दिए। उसके बाद जब हम कीव के रास्ते में लगातार चल रहे हैं तो ये तस्वीर भी हमने देखी है कि कीव के रास्ते में जब थोड़ी देर पहले पहुंचे थे तो वहां कुछ एरिया ऐसा है जहां पर फाइटर जेट्स उड़ रहे थे। जैसा आपने कहा, हमने रेडियो में सुना और हमने रेडियो में ये सुना कि डॉग फाइट हो रही है वहां पर फाइटर जेट्स के बीच। और उसके बाद अभी जो जानकारी मिल रही है वो सबसे बड़ी जानकारी है कि कीव जो कि राजधानी है, हालांकि इस पर हम पुष्टि नहीं करेंगे, लेकिन अपुष्ट जानकारी जो हमें यहाँ के सूत्र है वो बता रहे हैं कि रशिया की जो आर्मी है वो एक पास में बेस कैंप है, वहां पर जो उनके फाइटर जेट्स उतर सकते हैं, वहां पर उन्होंने कब्जा कर लिया है और बहुत जल्दी कीव पर भी वो पहुंच सकते हैं, इसलिए कर्फ्यू लगा दिया गया है।
Shravan.
That's the dispatch from the outskirts of Kiev right now, Niranjan.
Yeah, so Shravan is there. Alexei, you may not be aware, but even Ukrainian government sources are saying that it is a plan to encircle Kiev. I understand. I understand. I understand. We are with you. We are with you. We are with you. We are with you. I have 3 minutes. I have 3 minutes on the show.
Give me.
Yes, I have 3 minutes on the show. Yes, I'm coming to you. Let Andrew Leung speak and I'm coming back to you. I'm coming back to you. Andrew Leung. Andrew Leung, 1 minute. And then I'll go across to other panelists. Another panelist hasn't spoken. Andrew.
No, let me explain.
Yes, I'm coming to you. Alexei, I'm coming to you, my friend. I'm coming to you, my friend. Yes, I'm coming to you. I just want Andrew to make his point. He's been waiting. I have just 2 minutes on the show. Yes, Andrew.
Well, I think that as far as China is concerned, China doesn't want to be involved in this situation in Ukraine militarily. But of course, China supports every country's security concerns, but is now calling all sides to calm down and seek dialogue. But I think that there's no doubt that Beijing, together with Putin, both agree that the situation is developing almost inevitably towards this situation. I think Beijing realizes that as far as Putin is concerned, there is no doubt that Russia wants to rewind history back to the former USSR days, whereby the so-called satellite states would act as a cushion.
Yeah, I have some breaking news for you. I have breaking news for you, Andrew. Andrew, I have some breaking news for you.
Always held dear this idea of the security and the integrity of the former USSR.
Yeah,
so,
Andrew,
and then now, I think Putin sees that this is the right time to do it because you look at what the United States has been doing.
Speaking about the right time to do it.
NATO has been doing.
Speaking about the right time to do it, Andrew.
On the ground in Ukraine.
No, speaking about the right time to do it, and just small correction. Andrew is joining us from Hong Kong and not Beijing, so I'll just make that correction. Speaking about the right timing, I just got some breaking news now. From the Chinese media, speaking about the right time, one of the questions people is asking, what will China do in Taiwan, right? Getting in breaking news now, PLA, the defense ministry in China saying PLA actions will not stop unless Taiwan separatists stop provocation. Okay, that's another subject altogether, but there is a big debate raging. Let me get Rick Fisher, he hasn't spoken yet. Rick, what can be done at this stage, or can will NATO ramp up the pressure? Will that work?
Yes, thank you for having me on. Look, we are in a brand new age, an age in which democracy is under attack globally. Vladimir Putin has revived the ethno-nationalism of the 1930s, and he's just not going to stop. The United States and NATO must now arm. Putin has over 2,000 theater nuclear weapons. The United States only bases 100 in Europe. If this was any time for Putin to attack NATO in general, Poland, the Baltic states, the time is now. And unfortunately, Putin is giving strength to the dictatorship in China. Xi Jinping is watching this military operation and applying the lessons to an assault on Taiwan. When Taiwan falls, the forces on India's border to the north is going to increase by 100%. So when the foreign secretary failed to condemn the invasion of Ukraine, I was heartbroken. India's foreign policy is so small and so narrow. It is
No.
your freedom is linked to the survival of freedom everywhere. And
I think General
why
Bakshi
can't you
wanted to
just
respond
say
to you
that?
there, but because I don't have time, now I don't think you can call India's foreign policy narrow. I take objection to that, but I'll take a short break right now. I have to take a break right now. I thank all our panelists for joining us. General Bakshi, Maxim, Alexei, James, Rick, Glenn, Fred, only because of a lack of time, and Andrew Leung. Thank you. I'm coming back. We'll get you back on the channel on Republic. Keeping a close watch on the situation there. Our reporters are live. Joe Biden addressing in about 1 hour from now. Stay tuned.
आग को फैलने से रोकना मुश्किल है, पर नामुमकिन नहीं। अब फायरवॉल टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ सेंचुरी प्लाई आग से बचाए।
In the global employability rankings by Times Higher Education UK, only the following 6 institutions from India are ranked amongst the top 230 in the world for having the most employable graduates. IIT Delhi, IISc Bangalore, IIT Bombay, IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Kharkiv and Amity University.
पेंडेमिक के चलते भी अब जिंदगी को क्लेम करना है आसान। नीवा बूपा हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस के साथ, जो देता है 1 करोड़ तक का कवरेज सिर्फ 760 रुपीस पर मंथ में।
जिंदगी को क्लेम कर ले।
आग को फैलने से रोकना मुश्किल है, पर नामुमकिन नहीं। अब फायरवॉल टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ सेंचुरी प्लाई आग से बचाए।
On our way from